Hello, in this video I'm going to look at vectors and matrices. So let's have another equation. Now there are two ways usually of writing equations. The most widespread is to have bold upright. By upright I mean non-italicized variable names, and then if you're doing that handwriting you underline them to underlining used to be an indication to a printer to print in bold or to emphasize. Another way of doing it is to have an arrow over the variable, so I'll just cover that first. If you look on the accent menu, then right down here you've got rightwards arrow above, and you've got something like that, and you can left arrow into that and put a symbol there. If you don't want to use the menu, there is of course a shortcut, and for that it goes \VEC for vec. Now the first time I hit spacebar, autocorrect will turn \VEC into one of those arrows with nothing above it, or nothing under it, I beg your pardon. But if I then press space again, it will auto-correct a character followed by one of those into the character with the arrow above it, so you can construct those reasonably quickly. The other way of making equations is if we have a letter like that, I want to make it non-italic and I want to make it bold, and the italic and bold instructions are still on the home tab. Now most of the things on the home tab you wouldn't want to be using, and many of them wouldn't have an effect when you're in equation mode, but these still do. So having highlighted that symbol, I can press the I there to make it upright and the B to make it bold. And if I go back into the equation, first thing to note is that doing this does not affect operators like plus or minus. So if you want to be in italic bold, you don't need to keep switching back to, you don't need to keep turning the bold on and off to add the pluses and times and so on. So if I said, for instance, C \times, now the shortcut code there is being printed bold, but that's okay because it will still correct to the time symbol, which doesn't have a bold version. So I could instead use Control B and Control I to do these things instead. And if I want to do so, you've just seen you can use the times symbol. I'll go back to the equation design tab. As you've just seen, you can use the times symbol for vector products, or some people use other symbols which you can find if you look at them. If you want to write the scalar product between two vectors, remember I said in the previous video you shouldn't use dot for just multiplication of scalars, but if you want to do the scalar product between two vectors, that is denoted by a dot. If you just use an ordinary full stop, A dot B, you'll notice the spacing isn't really right. It's got more space after it, and I'm not sure why it does that, but it does. So a better thing to use is if we go back to the basic math palette there, you'll see we've got down here this thing. Sorry, not that thing at all. And no, it's not on the basic maths. It is on the operators, and as well as the bullet symbol, which we don't want, is this one called dot operator, or C dot for central dot, and that spaces it nicely on both sides and makes the dot central and makes it much easier to read. And again, if you want to use a keyboard shortcut, then C dot space will do that. So, and similarly, matrices are usually capitalized, bold, italic letters. And you can use those accordingly. So if I want to give the elements of this vector, I need to put them in some sort of array. So I'm going to turn bold off now. And over here on the matrix tab, I've got various arrays of elements that I can put in parentheses. So if I go open parentheses and then a 3x1 empty, they call it a matrix, but we're using it as a vector, and then right parentheses and then space, then it will correct like that, and I can put in the elements 1 minus 3x or whatever. If for some reason I want a bigger array, well, I can use, if it was a matrix, then I could instead, inside these parentheses, I'll just delete that, use a capital letter for a matrix and put a 3x3. Oh, sorry, put it in the wrong place there. Beg your pardon. Go over there. And just trying to be too clever. There you go. There's my 3x3 array, and I might want to add some entries to this, and I can use the right arrow to move between elements. 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. Notice it adjusting its spacing as it goes. If that's not big enough for me, then if I just put the cursor here and then right click, down here I've got an insert menu, so I can insert another row down there, so eventually you can grow matrices to any size, and once you've done it once, then you can just cut and paste or copy and paste ones the same size every time you want one in the same size. So that tells us how to deal with vectors and matrices, I think.